So let's start week 5. Sells. Who are you looking to dump?
Sells.
Who are you breaking up with?
I think the prime must sell for this week. Last week we had lots of soft sells. There was no must sell. This week we have a must sell. Get rid of him right now before things go bad. And that is Melvin Gordon, who is sitting here through 2 weeks, has averaged 2.2 and 1.9 yards per carry, both in very favorable matchups against Indy and New Orleans. Two of maybe not the two worst run defenses, like Washington and Cleveland are probably worse. But those are probably the next two after those two. These are bottom of the barrel run defenses. And he couldn't get anything going, and it's because that O-line is already injured and depleted, and it's basically what it was last year. But it's being masked by these crazy touchdown numbers. 2 touchdowns last week. 1 the week before, and touchdowns just don't continue at that rate. I don't care. He gets Oakland this week, and you're like, oh, that's like a pretty good matchup, but he just stunk in 2 good matchups before, so why is it going to be any different? Got to get out before the touchdowns disappear.
And this is, like you said, this is what we saw last year, and Melvin Gordon was not good last year because the O-line it was a rotation. They were constantly getting hurt, and they were filling it in with these backup offensive linemen. And it was ugly for Melvin Gordon, and it has been ugly the last 2 weeks. Now, you've been okay if you've had Melvin Gordon on your team because of the touchdowns, but it's not really sustainable. And just look at San Diego's offense as a whole. They've already lost Keenan Allen. Okay, their O-line is banged up. They lost Danny Woodhead. It's basically Melvin Gordon, Antonio Gates is banged up, and Phillip Rivers. Melvin Gordon is going to be easy to key in on for opposing defenses because, who are they throwing out in the passing game? Yes, Rivers is always a threat. He's a great quarterback, but he's throwing to, Dontrell Inman, who had a great week.
Tyrell the Gazelle Williams, Tyrell Wellick.
Tyrell the Gazelle. These are his top 2 receivers, guys.
Yeah.
These aren't barn burners.
No.
So opposing defenses shouldn't really feel too bad about matching up against a receiving game. And with the condition of their offensive line, it's going to get bad. It's going to get worse before it gets any better for Melvin. So now's the time because of the touchdowns. He still put up over 10 points in each of the last 2 games. And he started off the season hot. So he's put up good stat lines in every game. So hot. Get rid of him.
Yeah, get rid of him. He should be easy to sell because of his production and his soft schedule coming up. I spent all last week trying to trade guys, and the thing I kept running into is that a lot of fantasy owners, their number one concern is, does this help me this week? Does this player I'm buying have a good matchup this week? And does the player I'm selling have a bad matchup this week? And it's sort of they don't even see past that. It's well, why would I buy this player if he doesn't have a good matchup this week? It's well, you're thinking for the whole season, guy. But you don't have that problem with Melvin because Oakland it's perceived as a fantastic matchup, and it isn't fantastic, but it is positive. It is a good matchup.
Terrence West just ate them alive.
Yeah, Terrence West. Someone named Terrence West just ate them alive. Sell Melvin. Sell him as a top 5 running back, 'cause that's what his numbers have been. So I think you could probably sling him that way.
Yeah, and with the running back depth right now, the landscape of the position, there are going to be teams out there that are desperate, and they see you coming to them with Melvin Gordon on a silver platter, and they might be like, ooh, Antonio Brown. No, I'm just kidding. That would never happen. But still, you should be able to get really, really good value for Melvin Gordon. So this is kind of we were pumping to get rid of Jeremy Langford. Get rid of him now. I don't know if Melvin Gordon's quite there yet, but he's close. You do need to look at making a deal with Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, he has
to upgrade your team.
He has enough good weeks that one bad week probably wouldn't torpedo his value, but it's still this is his peak value because he's had multiple good weeks in a row. And it's also a good week to be targeting guys to buy a bit lower on. I bet you could do Melvin for Odell straight up. I wouldn't be surprised if that's doable, and I would do that if I was a Melvin owner.
Oh, yeah, in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Odell owner would realistically do that, but there are probably some people that are really low on Odell right now.
Yeah.
So it's worth a chance. You might have to add to that package, but I still would package Melvin plus another wide receiver to get Odell Beckham to upgrade that position. So Melvin Gordon, top sell of the week. Another sell that you wanted to talk about.
Yes.
Due to schedule is Go!
The Crowell, Isaiah Crowell. Yeah, this is he's been great through the first 4 weeks of the season. He only had one sort of down week, and that was against Miami, who are sort of shaping up to actually look like they're a pretty good run defense. Miami's kind of getting perceived as this trash fire defense across the board, when actually they have a pretty good run defense and a good pass rush. It's just their secondary it's nothing. There's no one back there, so you can throw on them very easily. So that was really his only down matchup, and he had good games against Philly and Baltimore, who are looking like really bad matchups too, but they were from big runs, and then he runs all over Washington, which anyone can do. But now his schedule is about to get legitimately difficult with New England this week, which McCoy had a nice game, but he mostly did that in the receiving game. In the running game, he still averaged close to 3 yards a carry. And then after that, it's Tennessee, Cincinnati, the Jets, Dallas, which is a little bit nicer, but then Baltimore. So that's four or 5 of his 6 matchups are just like, it's like a murderer's row for a running back. And he's not going to keep breaking big runs. He's not playing Washington again, ever. His next actual really favorable matchup is San Diego in week 16. And who knows if they're even still this slam dunk matchup by then. This kind of stuff changes. So now's a great time to sell Crowell, because you could probably sell him as a high-end RB2, low-end RB1 based off his production. And he's not actually a special talent. He's kind of like a league average running back who's just kind of benefited from big holes and ace-off matchup. Or do you argue? Do you think he's above average talent?
No, I'm just kidding. Well, I'm just thinking, you mentioned he's playing San Diego in week 16. That's championship week.
It's true.
Are you just stashing Crow for that championship matchup?
No, you sell him now and then buy him back in week 10 or week 11 for that matchup. That's the play. That's the play with Crow.
All right. So, yeah, Melvin Gordon. Crow.
Those are two.
Another sell.
It's another running back. This one is for similar reasons as I just mentioned, and also I think hard sell. Matt Jones, who just had a very nice week against Cleveland, but everyone has a good week against Cleveland. Awful run defense. And now it gets very tough for him. He gets Baltimore this week, Philly the week after, Detroit, which is a nicer matchup, and then Cincinnati after that, and then his bye week. So you get one out of the next 5 weeks of him a potentially usable good week. And it's not really worth it, especially because coming off of a nearly 20-point game, you can sell him as a legit RB2 probably, just off the virtue that he got 20 plus carries and he had a good game. He's a starting running back. That's pretty valuable.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I mean, like you said, they're not going to play Cleveland every week. Mm-hmm. Jones, to me, if you're talking about the eye test, he's never really blown me away with his skill set.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the whole narrative around Matt Jones this year was that he was going to be the workhorse, right? The volume alone, similar to what people were saying about Latavius Murray, which hasn't panned out.
No.
But Matt Jones is going to be the workhorse. He will keep you afloat due to volume alone. And yes, this last week against Cleveland, he had 22 carries. He had over 100 yards, 117 and a touchdown. But before that, I mean, he put up 17 for 65 against the Giants. Mm-hmm. Not great. He put up 13 for 61 against Dallas, but Dallas doesn't have that fantastic of a run defense.
Yeah.
So his one really good game this season came against Cleveland. And like you said, his schedule is ugly coming up. And the landscape of the running back position, we keep on hammering this point home. Mm-hmm. Matt Jones has legitimate value because he is a starter in Washington. Now, people might not realize how involved Chris Thompson has been in their offense because he has been seeing a very high percentage of snaps.
Yeah.
And I think you can kind of mask Jones as this 3-down workhorse back. I mean, maybe not to somebody more savvy, but even to a savvy player, they see that Matt Jones just put up a big week. They see that he's the first and second down back, and they need a running back. If that's the case, then yeah, get rid of Matt Jones. Mm-hmm. Basically, any running back is what we're talking about that has legitimate value. You look at what they're going to do or what you perceive them to do throughout the rest of the year, and then you can make decisions based off of that. Okay, if you really believe that Matt Jones is going to be this RB1, RB2 the rest of the season, then maybe you're not inclined to trade him. But We don't believe that that's going to be the case. We don't believe that with Isaiah Crowell either, or Melvin Gordon, the three running backs we've listed. And I think they all, as of week 5, have legitimate value. So you can go upgrade your team and again, look for players that maybe have had down weeks, players that have a better schedule coming up in the upcoming weeks. So you might think, like, let's give an example. If you trade a running back for a running back, we've mentioned this in our previous pods, it seems like a lateral move. But if you target a running back you feel is going to have a significant advantage throughout the rest of the year, maybe a running back that's been bottled up by good run defenses for the first part of the year, and you foresee them to explode, then it's not really a lateral move because you're making that move to improve your roster.
Yeah.
Okay. So these are things you should consider, especially around week 5. So those are 3, a few hard sells. And then,
I think now's the time for those guys. Like Jones, if his schedule was still soft, I'd say, like, well, hold on to him. He got 20 carries. Maybe that continues. Who knows? He's in a good-ish offense. But like the schedule is just so rough that it's not. I don't think we saw that against the Giants the week before, and he didn't do that much. I think you got to get out from under him now. Another sell to pivot off of running backs to the wide receiver position. T.Y. Hilton. Thank you, Hilton.
Thank you, Hilton.
Thank you, Hilton.
Yeah.
This is really just that the Colts look really bad, like really, really bad. I'm not sure why they're this bad, but they are. And
the offensive line, it's bad.
Yeah, I guess that'd
really,
be it.
really. And I mean, the T.Y. people were pumping T.Y. Hilton because Moncrief went down, so I think he still has that value because you can sell him as the wide receiver 1 to Andrew Luck. But I mean, last week in London, he caught a touchdown pass, but he wasn't really involved for 3 out of the 4 quarters of that game.
Yeah.
Jacksonville's defense had basically kept, and we're talking about Jacksonville here. Jacksonville had basically kept the Indianapolis offense in check. They were forcing Andrew Luck out of the pocket. He wasn't comfortable because his offensive line is terrible. It was only when they fell behind by double digits that they just started airing it out, right? They were slinging it down the field. Jacksonville kind of went into a softer defense.
Yeah.
And T.Y. Hilton ended up finishing with 42 yards. He scored a touchdown, which saved his week. But I'm concerned. I'm legitimately concerned with the Indianapolis offense because so far their offensive MVP has been Frank Gore, Old Man River, who actually looked pretty spry against Jacksonville. But the receivers, you never know what you're going to get, really, right? Dorsett was being pumped as, he's this great wide receiver too now. He's basically been invisible. He had one long play in the game against Jacksonville. It was his only catch.
Yeah, I mean, Dorsett's a sell too. I mean, he's going to be harder to sell, but if people are like, like a 12-plus point game, part of the Colts, like I'd be selling Dorsett too if you had him. A player who's like a majority of their production comes in garbage time, like that's just, you don't want to be part of that because the game script has to go perfectly for them to get that kind of garbage time. Because if the game is like close and they still lose and then they never get garbage time, you really need the defense to be like, all right, we're up 2 or 3 scores, we're going to stop trying. And that's not going to happen every time they lose. So it's dangerous to bet on that.
Yeah, and I mean, they get Chicago this week at home, which should be an okay matchup. But Chicago last week, I mean, they basically kept what had been a high-flying Detroit offense in check. I mean, Marvin Jones, the greatest wide receiver in the history of the NFL.
No longer
he
wide
put up
receiver
pedestrian
1.
numbers. Yeah, Golden Tate was invisible again.
Yeah.
So they basically, and Matt Stafford looked terrible against Chicago. So I don't think Chicago will be this home run matchup. And then after that, T.Y. Hilton gets Houston in Houston, which is typically a tough matchup. Tennessee, they're a great run defense. Pass defense is mediocre, so that's not the worst matchup. But then you get Kansas City, Green Bay, and a bye. So schedule, I wouldn't say is terrible. It's definitely not favorable. I think it's probably lukewarm. Right. And then he has his bye. So I think now would be a nice time to sell T.Y. Hilton. Okay, you have the whole Moncrief's out. He's the guy. He's put up double-digit points in each of the last 2 weeks, including that amazing game against San Diego. And I think he has a lot of value right now. You definitely sell him as a wide receiver 1 to go get maybe a running back that you feel will have a big second half of the year.
Yeah.
How would you feel based off of what we saw from Green Bay before their bye week. How would you feel about trading T.Y. Hilton for Eddie Lacy?
I would do that. Yeah. I think that's like a very doable trade too. That sounds realistic. Yeah, I would do that. I think Eddie Lacy is like, we mentioned him as a buy low last week. He's harder to buy low this week just because now he's back. The owner who held him through the buy is like, no, sorry, I'm using him. But yeah, I would do that trade. I would do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd definitely do that as well.
All right. Let's move on to our last sell. This is the rare quarterback sell, and that is Matt Ryan. Yes, he's been amazing. Yes, he's been the best quarterback to ever play the game. But he's done it against very soft matchups. I don't care what you think of Carolina. They were elite last year. They're not this year. We've seen that, Matt Ryan lighting them up wasn't a product of Matt Ryan is now this amazing quarterback. It's that this defense isn't good this year. We saw Blaine Gabbert have a good game against them. And, the only reason Sam Bradford probably didn't is that the Minnesota defense was so suffocating. They didn't, the offense didn't need to do anything.
He still had a respectable game.
Yeah,
I mean, he managed the game well. Yeah.
Yeah. So and right now Matt Ryan goes into Denver, which is an awful place, and then into Seattle, also an awful place. He's in for probably two worst matchups you could have for a quarterback besides Minnesota, I guess at this point.
Yeah. Minnesota.
So he's a quarterback, so who knows how much you can really get. But honestly, anything anything that's better than like a waiver wire pickup, I would do because he's not usable for these 2 weeks. And it's after that, his value is completely gone. His schedule softens up after those 2 games, so I guess if you want to hold him on your bench for 2 weeks, you could use him again after that. But there's nothing wrong with probing around and try to sell him off of this 500-yard, 4-touchdown game like that. That might get you something.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I mean, you could look at upgrading your quarterback position too. If you really believe that Matt Ryan is a mirage, because we've seen him start the season hot. I mean, the Falcons they came out of the gate blazing last year, almost the same exact script, and then they fell apart in the latter half of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, you could potentially find a quarterback for quarterback deal, which I wouldn't be opposed to. The problem with trading quarterbacks is they generally don't demand a lot of value. So even though Matt Ryan has been amazing, unless everything aligns perfectly, it's probably hard to trade a quarterback for like a position player of value. Unless the team they perceive the quarterback position as really important. And your league better than we do. So if you have guys that are playing in your league that really love the quarterback position, then yeah, definitely target them with Matt Ryan because he is the #1 fantasy player in football right now.
Yeah, a good person to target would be whoever owns Russell Wilson, because if they drafted him, they probably drafted him, like they had to draft him high to get him, which means they're probably not the type to stream quarterback in the first place, and now he's on his bye week, and they're probably scrambling to figure out what to do, and like, oh no, look, you can have Matt Ryan, and you can get, some position player. I'm not sure what caliber, but like if I would take like Sterling Shepard for Matt Ryan, and that might be doable.
I mean,
because he's probably like a bench player for that person.
Yeah, I mean, I would take any startable position player for a quarterback in a trade, but I would also look to, you look at the rest of the season matchups, like we're talking about earlier, setting yourself up for victories throughout the rest of the season, down the stretch and into the playoffs. Now, it's probably a little bit too early to be looking at playoff matchups. You have to get there first, right? So you want to look at the schedule leading into the playoffs, and then maybe around week 10, you start looking at, okay, who has a better playoff schedule? How can I set my team up to succeed in the playoffs? But right now, the goal is to get to the playoffs. Look at quarterbacks that have really cakey matchups in the next 5 weeks or so. That could really, really help you get into the playoffs because Matt Ryan doesn't for the next couple weeks. He won't have soft matchups like he's had the beginning of the season until, I don't know. His start was really, really easy. If you look at his schedule from here on out, he has Denver this week in Denver. That's a scary matchup, like you said. Yeah. Seattle, terrible. San Diego, and then Green Bay at home. Those are probably pretty cakey matchups, and then Tampa Bay. So he gets 3 relatively soft matchups after that. So, if you can't find anything for Matt Ryan, he's not like a super hard sell because of his position anyways, because you might not be able to receive anything for him.
Right.
So you could legitimately hold him on your bench for a couple of weeks. I don't
Yeah.
like keeping quarterbacks on my bench, though.
I don't either. No.
Yeah, so, I mean, and then if you look at his schedule after that, he gets Philadelphia, which is a pretty good defense. Then his bye. Then Arizona, who by week 12, they haven't been good so far.
Yeah.
But coming into the season, they were supposed to be an elite defense. We'll see how they are performing in week 12. Then Kansas City, another defense is supposed to be elite, but they've been so up and down. Then Los Angeles, who's been good. San Francisco, Carolina. That's his playoff schedule right there. Rams, 49ers, Carolina. The Rams have been pretty adequate against the quarterback.
Yeah, no,
and
they've
wide
actually
receiver
been
position.
like decent. Yeah.
Yeah, San Francisco, okay, that's a good matchup. At Carolina, we'll see how Carolina's performing. So right now
how
it looks
they
like
adjust,
a pretty good playoff schedule. You might be able to work that into your narrative as well, but I mean, if you can sell a quarterback, geez.
Yeah, I try to avoid whenever I'm looking at schedule. I try not to look further than like 4 or 5 weeks ahead, just because it changes so much. Defenses that have been bad the first month, we're going to see improve. Defenses that were good, we're going to see them deteriorate. Like it's very much like up and down. So
injuries happen.
Injuries happen. Yeah, exactly. Guys that were injured the first month are now healthy and they come back. Like, the Green Bay secondary has been awful, but if Sam Shields is healthy coming out of the bye, maybe that secondary isn't as bad anymore. That's you have to pay a little bit more attention to that. So, yeah, Matt Ryan, interesting sell, a soft sell, but just see what you can get. I wouldn't want to start him this week in Denver, regardless.
Oh, definitely not.
No.
What quarterbacks would you take for Matt Ryan in a 1-for-1? You mentioned Russell Wilson.
If the Russell Wilson owner is panicking and you can do a 1-for-1 Matt Ryan for Russell, I'd do that in a heartbeat. I don't think that's possible, but if you could, I would do it. One I was looking at based off his schedule over the next few weeks is Ben Roethlisberger, who gets the Jets, the Dolphins, and then the Patriots. Jets and Dolphins are both like incredibly soft matchups for the quarterback. And we just saw Tyrod have a nice game against the Patriots, so that's not as scary as you think. So that's 3 pretty good weeks in a row. Other than that, who has quarterbacks that have a good matchup this week? Like Dak has Cincinnati and then Green Bay. Those are 2 pretty good matchups. Who else? That's probably it. Well, no, I was about to say Cam, but you're not gonna be able to get Cam, even coming off of like some struggles. You're still not gonna be able to get him.
Yeah, not for Matt Ryan. So you would, if you traded Matt Ryan for Dak Prescott, you would probably need more than just Dak Prescott, right?
I'd ask for more, but even you drafted Matt Ryan as a streamer. You're not starting him this week, and unless you have a really deep bench, you can't really afford to hold them through these 2 weeks. So it's almost like you're using a quarterback that you would be picking up in replacement. That's the way I view quarterback. It's just like it's so replaceable. Why would I hold it? I have Derek Carr and he's been playing really well. But as soon as it gets to their bye, I'm going to drop him. I'm not going to hold on to Derek Carr.
That's good information. I'll pick him up then.
We'll see. Maybe not. Maybe I'll trade him to you instead. That's what I'll do.
Well, I have Russell Wilson, so that would be stupid.
Oh, well, there we go.